Hello and welcome. I'm Bimbo Loyede. Tonight, panic in Gombe as 2 explosions rock the central market in the state capital, killing scores of people. Former Army Chief Lieutenant General Kenneth Minima urges sustenance of military's achievements in terrorism fight as he hands over to new Chief of Army Staff. President Buhari dissolves boards of parastatals and agencies, sacks the Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. And another deadly shooting in the U.S. kills 4 Marines and a gunman at 2 Navy buildings in Tennessee.
And on business news tonight, financial derivatives company forecast a cut in headline interest rate as analysts await the outcome of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting.
And in sports news, Nigerian player Jim Kambulus upsets defending champion of the Lagos Badminton Classics.
We begin in northeast Nigeria, where residents of Gombe, the capital of Gombe State, have been thrown into panic following 2 explosions at the Gombe Central Market, killing at least 40 and injuring over 70 people. A rescue officer and member of the Nigeria Red Cross Society, who prefers not to be mentioned, told Channels Television that 48 dead bodies were taken to the morgues of the Specialist Hospital and Federal Teaching Hospital located in Gombe. The blasts were reported to have occurred around 6 p.m. this evening at the peak of commercial activities at the market in preparation for the Eid al-Fitr celebration tomorrow. The Commissioner of Police in the State Command confirmed the attacks, adding that security operatives and other rescue teams are working to render emergency assistance to the victims. The new Chief of Army Staff, Major General Tukur Buratai, took full charge of the Nigerian Army today. His predecessor, Lieutenant General Kenneth Minima, at a brief ceremony in Abuja, handed over to him after bringing him up to speed on the latest developments. General Minima said that he is leaving behind a military that has reclaimed its glory, which was almost lost as a result of the Boko Haram insurgency. President Muhammadu Buhari sacked the service chiefs appointed by former President Goodluck Jonathan on Monday, July the 13th.
Subsequently,
it is a new page for the Nigerian Army as the former Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Kenneth Minima, officially hands over the mantle of leadership to the newly appointed Chief of Army Staff, Major General Tukur Buratai. According to the former Army Chief, his 18 months in office were challenging as he works to restore the almost lost glory of the Nigerian Army in the face of insurgency in the northeast.
At the time of my appointment, our army, and indeed the nation, was going through one of the worst crises in our history. The Boko Haram terrorists had nearly brought the Nigerian army and indeed the armed forces to her knees. Soldiers regularly fled the battlefield on the slightest indication of an approaching adversary. Sadly, the nation began to lose confidence in its army and indeed in its military.
The former Army Chief, however, urged the new Chief of Army Staff to sustain the ongoing fight against insurgency in the north.
Today, I'm leaving behind an army that can hold its own against any adversary without batting an eyelid. An army that has vowed never again to concede any inch of Nigeria's territory to terrorists. And an army that has reclaimed its dignity and respect from the generality of citizens. It is this legacy I'm leaving behind that I implore you to sustain.
For the new Chief of Army Staff, he will meet with his officers to discuss his security agenda and plans towards ending the insurgency in the northeast before talking to the public.
I'm not going to make too much speech right now. I will still come back after the whole ceremony.
He, however, said he will rely on the advice from the former Chief of Army Staff when needed to maintain discipline in the army.
We will not leave you to go. We will continue to defer to you whenever we feel you will come to our aid and give us your words of wisdom and advice. I very much know your tenure as the Chief of Army Staff has brought discipline. Everybody has sat up, and the discipline has really gotten root into the Nigerian army.
Insecurity, and especially insurgency in the northeast, is considered by many as a major task ahead for the new army chief.
The immediate past military leadership, led by the Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, can be said to have had the most turbulent time in the history of the Nigerian military. Under their watch, Nigerians experienced insecurity in a magnitude never experienced. However, latest appointments may restore public confidence in the military. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafor, takes a look at the military under former security chiefs.
The immediate past Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Kenneth Minima, the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Usman Jibrin, and the Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Adeshola Amosu, were appointed on January 16, 2014, at a time when insecurity had grown to an unmanageable state. On assumption of office, all the military chiefs gave assurance of fighting insecurity, such as terrorism in the northeast and oil theft in the south-south geopolitical zone of the country. However, in the more than 1 year of their tenure, these military chiefs took the bashing from Nigerians and the rest of the world. The Chief of Defense Staff, Air Chief Marshal Alex Bade, shortly after his appointment in January 2014, promised that by April 2014 the insurgency will be a thing of the past. His promise was not fulfilled as the Boko Haram insurgents devised another tactic of inflicting terror on Nigerians, kidnapping and sacking of communities which they eventually declare as their caliphate. It was within the same period that over 200 schoolgirls were abducted in Chibok, a community in Borno State. Again, the military came under fire for first denying that no such incident happened and for its inability to bring back the abducted girls. The military chiefs were also accused of high-handedness, embezzlement of funds meant for the fight against the insurgents. Another sore reminder of the immediate past military leadership was accusation of being apolitical, despite assurance that it is a neutral body as far as politics was concerned. The military was also accused of dabbling into politics by taking sides in the elections in Osun State and Ekiti State. All of that was to change for a while when the same military asked for 6 weeks extension of the 2015 general elections to enable it sack the terrorists from their camps. It rose from its slumber by waging war against the terrorists in a way never seen before. Several communities and villages were liberated from the terrorists' grip. On the waterways, the Nigerian Navy can be said to have performed relatively well with the arrest of several oil thieves and purchase of new equipment. The Air Force was also active at the tail end of the administration, providing air support in the fight against terrorism. While it is safe to say that the immediate past military leadership performed under very difficult circumstances, many Nigerians feel that the situation was brought about by its initial slow response to the insecurity in the country. It is expected that the new military chiefs will consolidate on the recent gains and liberate the country.
Well, let's discuss this in greater depth. Joining me now in the news at 10 is Colonel Ola Majoyobe. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
Good. Now, the armed forces have been criticized quite a lot in the last 18 months because of their inability to grapple with insurgency. Were there genuine reasons why this was so?
Yes, I believe so. Except that I would like to explain why this is so. Now, there is so much emphasis that we can place on knowledge. Now, if you do not have adequate information about any issue whatsoever, chances are that your position on such issues will not be right. Now, insurgency is not regular warfare. It's not conventional warfare. The Nigerian Armed Forces have been set up and trained to conduct conventional operations. So, I recall that a couple of years ago, the issue came up in the Armed Forces Command and Staff College. And I happened to be a student on that course, and the issue was raised. How well should we prepare for insurgencies and terrorism in particular? I remember that I became the butt of so much laughter when I proposed that my project was going to be on terrorism and the Nigerian Armed Forces. I'm sorry, whether it was among the staff or among my colleagues, nobody thought that was worthwhile, except that we had a British officer. Then we used to have British officers in our Command and Staff College who said to me, I think your paper was good.
Okay, let me just ask you this.
Yes.
Because if there was inactivity before,
Yes.
suddenly, about 6 weeks before the elections, there was activity.
Yes.
And Nigerians were pleasantly surprised, let me put it that way. The question is, what changed?
Well, unfortunately, because of my background as a military intelligence officer, there are some issues that I will not be able to comment about in the public domain. However, even the information that is already in the public domain will explain this. I have said these were soldiers, that's why they did so well in Sierra Leone, so well in the Congo, wherever. And now they are confronted with a different kind of war for which they were not prepared. So naturally, there were lapses here and there. However, you see the period, the 6-week period, the magic 6-week period now, I know for a fact, and this is not a secret anywhere, that the troops, and even the former president said so, got most of the kind of weapons and equipment that they should have. Now, but the most important thing which I would like Nigerians to take away is this. By deciding to hold territory, by deciding to rename Mubi, Madagali, Goza, and all of that, and putting up their own flags, they ran into a roadblock. This is the kind of war for which the Nigerian Armed Forces are very good, because it's conventional. Everybody on that other side is an enemy, you know. So the major thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that the enemies played into the hands of Nigerian Armed Forces. And if they do it again, they are going to be wiped right out of our territory in Nigeria.
All right, so now we have new appointments,
Yes.
and some have said very strategic ones. But others feel that maybe younger officers might have been able to come up, or might be able to come up with something that is a bit more daring, a bit more radical to address this insurgency. What's your opinion?
Well, my take on that is this. I think the issue of age really has something that is psychological, you know, that is attached to it. The assumption that if we had younger officers, let's say from the rank of brigadier generals and colonels, they might be a little bit more daring. Well, in the public domain, I will accept that kind of argument. But all military persons know that there is a kind of level of maturity that comes with age. It's not all bravado and Rambo kind of thing. Because do not forget that this is a very serious issue in which lives are placed on the line every minute, in which the soldiers may be killed, civilians may be caught in the line of fire. I mean, so many things can go wrong. So, in any case, if you look at the average age of those who have been appointed, they're young people. I'm far older than most of them.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on the news at 10.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Colonel Ola Majoegbe, a retired military intelligence officer. In part 2, after the break, President Buhari backs Nigeria's quest for nuclear technology, but for peaceful purposes. Do stay with us.